Hello, everybody. Welcome to another live chat with, and this time we have Arran Baker.
Woo! Hey, everyone.
Welcome, Arran. Glad to have you here. We have spoken a couple of times now, previously, and it's always been a pleasure to talk to you. And we actually talked a little bit over Twitter, on Twitter as well, I kind of like always looked up to that piece that you had on Spider-Man. Funny enough, when you don't know this, but probably don't know this, but when you were doing that, I was actually doing like a 4-day marathon of animation, doing like a Spider-Man piece for like a tutorial.
Oh, nice.
Here in the channel. And like when I was nearly finished, and the animation is rubbish, but when I was nearly finished, John, a friend of mine, told me like, "Have you seen this?" And then and I was like, "No, just send me a link." And it's like, "Oh, it's by this guy called Arran. It's the Spider-Man piece." And I checked it out, and I was like, "Man, this is what I should be doing." Like this stuff is great. So yeah, since then, like I've been following on Twitter, and your tweets are also super entertaining. So glad to be talking to you in front of people.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah. So yeah, like for everyone that doesn't know you, can you please introduce yourself and talk a little bit about Arran, the person, the animator, the legend?
Sure. So I'm Arran Baker. I'm a computer animator, a senior animator at Jellyfish Pictures. I've been in industry for about 5 years now. Worked at other studios such as Blue Zoo Animation Studios and Axis Animation. I graduated from Bournemouth University, and now I'm working on a very exciting feature film.
Nice one. So yeah, like for everyone watching right now, there's about 14, 15 people watching. So everyone watching, feel free to actually drop comments as usual here in the comment box. We'll actually be like on the lookout. And then whenever we have good comments from you, any questions you have for Arran, myself, anyone else, just feel free to actually kind of drop a comment, and we'll answer them as we can, as fast as we can. So can you talk a little bit about how you actually got started and your experience and like your passion for animation?
Sure.
Always interesting to hear that.
It started from a very early age. I was actually thinking about this earlier because I started watching other animated movies this morning, and my passion kind of came from both video games and like Disney movies. So from a very young age, I used to watch my dad play like Tomb Raider on PlayStation and that kind of thing. So I was already like introduced very young. This is when I was like 3 or 4 kind of thing. Even my dad has Sega Genesis and kind of used to play a lot of games. Yeah. And so that kind of, and I always grew up around Disney movies, and it just kind of struck me one day that someone must be doing this. And so I think I was one of those people that at school kind of figured out what I wanted to do quite early. Like a lot of my friends, like, I don't know what to do. And I was just like, I want to go into games. I have no idea how to do it. Yeah. But I kept on. It was one of those things where I think we had work experience at secondary school where usually you would just go to a shop or whatever. Yeah. And my mum knew that I wanted to go into games. And so she contacted a university in Cambridge, where I'm from, and asked if I could shadow the course for a couple of weeks, just kind of understand how it works. And they would essentially give me some training before, so that I knew what I needed to aim for before I went to college kind of thing. And I was about 14, 15 at the time. Mm-hmm. And yeah, they was all for it. And basically it just meant that each day I would go to the university, one of the lecturers would sit me down and say, this is how they would, I think that was in like May 2009, 2007, something like that around the time.
Okay, yeah.
And the first thing he ever did is he just sat me down in front of a computer and stared out the window into a car park. And he said, you see that van there? I want you to make that van, and you have 3 days. And so he said, here's how you make a cube. Here's how you make a sphere, a cylinder. Here's how you pull things around. I kind of it felt quite intuitive to like figure out how to maneuver around. And he taught me the basics over like a couple of hours, and then kind of left me to it. Obviously I struggled a little bit at first, kind of just wrap my head around how it all works because I'd never used it before. But that's kind of where it all started. And yeah, I mean, I've grown up on Disney movies. One of my favorite Disney movies growing up was Tarzan. And I actually watched that this morning.
Yeah,
it's kind of like an inspiration thing.
Yeah. That's one of my favorites, Glenn Keane.
Right.
Ever since watching that, I've been a massive fan of Glenn Keane exactly because of Tarzan. I mean, he's done many other things since.
Yeah,
but
totally.
Tarzan and that scene, like especially when the way he actually kind of grabs things and he walks, feels super incredibly flashy.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's incredible. Like to me, it's just like in the studies, the amount of studying that he went through to actually kind of make a man more animalistic.
Yeah, totally. And they still kind of drew his anatomy over the top. I think they had sketches where they drew his muscles in, but obviously they exaggerate his proportions and everything. But I find it amazing, like the idea that, because I'm sure you know this, but like Glenn Keane I think half the animation team was in Paris, and he was out and about one day and he saw some people rollerblading, and they were doing like where they bring their legs, they swerve in between the cones, and that's where he got the inspiration for like going down the vines and everything. And I was like, that's genius.
That's genius, exactly.
Very cool.
Yeah, so cool. And you also have, as you were saying right now, you actually wanted to work in games, and you always had like fancy work in games.
Yeah,
so
totally.
Always awesome to actually find like a fellow gamer.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about your like favorite games and like your passion for games?
Yeah, sure. God, it's hard to say. Some of the favorite games that off the top of my head, my favorite game that I'm playing at the moment, which I'm actually replaying, is Nier Automata. It's a Japanese game produced by Platinum Games, and it's incredible. It's one of those like hidden gems, which it's fairly well known now, but like not a lot of people know it either. It's like the people who have played it love it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love that game from both like an aesthetic and also from like a narrative point of view. Like one thing for me, like I tend to latch myself more to single player, like story narrative driven games.
Yeah.
Just because I think it's the same with movies. Like the narrative is what you invest in most and the characters. Sure. And so with Nier, I'm very like, I find like philosophy and that kind of thing I find it fascinating. I don't look into it too much, but like when someone picks up like a hypothesis or something, I find it really interesting. And that's what Nier is like built around. Like they have all these philosophers, and like they've brought it into this like essentially an android existential trying to figure out what their purpose is kind of thing.
Yeah,
I find it really interesting, so I love that game.
Yeah, I actually played it. I didn't, because the resetting, the dying and then starting from the beginning.
That
stuff in the beginning actually got to me because I didn't had a lot of time. But like I remember, like being in awe of the animation work they've done on that game.
So good.
Platinum Games are incredibly good at actually kind of pulling animation in games and like pushing animation to levels that haven't been seen before.
Right.
And Nier is like that. It's like the way she walks when she's relaxed, the way she attacks.
So good, isn't it?
Yeah, how she transforms from being like calm and collected to then just like going like into this pushed animation, like flying around.
Just gets berserk.
Yeah, and even like from like even for myself after working in games for so long, how they solve certain issues that you could clearly see, like how can we actually kind of, for example, go and grab the weapon and then actually take it off and then start swinging it. So instead of actually doing that, they just pop the weapon in your hand and you start swinging it, and as soon as you're done, pops out and he's actually on the back already.
Yeah, it's kind of like levitating, isn't it, behind her?
Yeah, it's like levitating behind it. Yeah. So yeah, you never really think about it because it feels natural, but it's incredible how they actually solved that issue and they made it just work, right? And then it's the way it's supposed to be.
It just it's one of those games where it feels so satisfying to play when you're fighting.
Yeah.
I think that's one thing that has a lot of replay value for me, is because once you've played the game through, once you understand the story, it's not as fun to play again because you know what's going to happen. But the bit that keeps you coming back is the gameplay itself.
Yeah.
And it was like that for Nier and also God of War. Like
God of-
I don't tend to like once I've completed the narrative, that's usually what I'm there for. So I'll just play the narrative and I've invested in the characters. I'm like, okay, I can move on now. I don't usually go through and grind an entire game. But with God of War, it was so satisfying and just like so weighty to like throw your axe around and everything that I literally completed the game 100%, went and just collected everything because it was just fun to play.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. As soon as you finish the game the first time and you come back to the like realm, and you're like, now you have to collect these things, and you're like, yes, please. You just go off and do the thing.
Yeah, exactly. I love it.
Yeah, it's so cool. So Nier and God of War are two of your favorite games.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely up there. I mean, going back from more like a nostalgic point of view, I mean, if we're going really far back, like I used to love playing like Crash Bandicoot, Spyro, that kind of thing. Obviously, when I was younger, that's the kind of games I used to play. I love Tekken. I was a big fan of Tekken growing up.
Yeah,
Tekken 3 in particular.
Yeah.
So
Eddie
good.
Gordo. I love.
Yeah.
He looks like so good.
he's too strong. Just does breakdowns upon break. Like just
yeah. You know, I actually always used to actually be called a cheat because I used to always select him.
Yeah.
It was like, don't select. So Eddie Gordo was like, it was like in the GoldenEye, there was a character that you couldn't select either on the original GoldenEye. Otherwise, you had the odd job. Otherwise, you'd be cheated because you. So Eddie Gordo was the same, right? Everyone was like, oh, he's too powerful. But the thing is, I was actually practicing capoeira at the time. So I identify myself with Eddie because I was like, this is my guy. He's doing the stuff I want to do in the future. But yeah, no, I couldn't select him.
That sucks.
Yeah.
It's a really fun game. I think one of the games that I really dug, I got into was Ratchet and Clank by Insomniac.
Mm-hmm.
The original one, I loved it so much because it had an underlying tone of like trying to talk about consumerism, but it played it in such a like sarcastic way, and it was like super charming and just really fun. And it's like super cartoony, and it's just I loved all the world building. All the gadgets and everything. I don't know. Growing up, I loved that game. So
yeah. No, it's there's certain games that were like very generational. Unfortunately, I'm from the older generation, so for me it was like before. But I remember when these games came out, like before that, like Jack and Daxter and Ratchet and Clank and all that stuff. And I remember that those games were normally released on console drop because they actually kind of gathered grown-ups and smaller ones at the same, because they were actually entertaining.
Right.
And you could play for a long time. It was a single player story, and like, you know, it was all cool. So like, good to hear that. And how do you like, I mean, I know that you haven't worked in games so far, but like the way you see it now, like, do you find a lot of difference from a game like God of War to like a feature film in your eyes?
Yes and no. I think obviously the way you're taken through the story from like, obviously you go from like a gameplay perspective or someone driving you essentially. I think that makes a very different experience because you it's hard to describe, but obviously if someone's driving you, then everything has like a complete intention of like they want you to see it this specific way. Whereas obviously you can guide it with games, and obviously that's when you tend to get more linear based games where they're like very specifically like you have to go this way. But then obviously you get a lot more like open world games or like things are left more to interpretation. So I think in that sense it makes a very different experience. So as in terms of as an animator, I think you can kind of there's one level of like you're trying to make them connect to the character, but then you're also trying to like I don't know, leave them up to like it's hard to describe.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the biggest conundrum about the two, because I feel like the more we actually kind of grow both industries, film is pretty much settled, but I feel like games is such a new medium that people are still trying to find out exactly what makes it special and all that stuff. And obviously being an interactive medium, that's definitely the one thing that people go like, for sure, this is why games are so much more engaging.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, but when it comes to animation, I think there is still like some work to be done. Obviously, like, barriers to be broken, and I think every year with new games, there's new things to be done. But when you see games like Nier, for example, or God of War,
Yeah.
you're like, okay, I think there's a new standard now of things that we
Yeah.
can achieve, right? Because this game was so good. Now, what's next?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, but yeah, it's kind of interesting because I kind of feel like you in a way that I feel like both have amazing things, and it's difficult to select between both. You just like both,
Yeah,
right?
it is
For
one of those things. People ask me all the time, do I prefer games or movies? And I'm like, I'm literally slap bang in the middle.
that's it.
For me, at the end of the day, I just I'm there for stories and narrative and just resonating with characters and the message.
Yeah,
And I think that's what's so powerful about it. Like the reason, obviously, for me as a consumer, at least, when it comes down to like playing God of War or something, the bit that made me love it so most, the thing that made me love it the most was the story and how you've got Kratos going to like essentially be a father figure, and he's hesitant to tell his son about his past and all these kinds of things. And I think that's what made it have such like an emotional weight.
yeah.
And then obviously as an artist, as an animator, that's when I sit back and I'm just like, this is incredible in terms of like what they are able to achieve, like aesthetically and just like the feeling of everything. So like there's two sides of me when it comes to like how I interpret games and movies, is like as a consumer and as an artist kind of thing.
Yeah. It makes sense actually, because you as a consumer you want some things, as an artist you want some others. So
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, don't actually kind of intersect, right?
Because there are some incredible movies that have terrible stories.
Yeah, exactly.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Same with games. Like there are some which have really interesting concepts. Like this is probably an unpopular opinion, but when I recently started to try and play Horizon Zero Dawn, I loved the concept. I loved the world building and the direction they were trying to go. But I think in terms of execution and actually playing it as like a gameplay, as a gamer, and trying to like just, you want everything to just work and feel natural and flow. And there was just something about it that I kept on disconnecting with, and I couldn't get into it.
Yeah.
There's also, I think there's also my artist side probably pinging in the side of my brain as I'm playing. When you've got AI characters who obviously like they were still figuring out like the technicalities of like making a massive AAA game. Like this game is huge, and just when you've got AI or like cutscenes where they're literally just like robotics staring you in the face, and like the lip sync is completely out and those kinds of things, it just disconnects me and I can't unsee it. And so I couldn't get into the game, honestly. And I was gutted because I really wanted to. I wanted to play it so much.
I was like, the first interview that I did on this live chats was actually with Richard Lico. And we both agreed in the fact that as an animator, whenever you actually kind of, because you're so, like, animations is what you see in the screen, right? So you can't play badly animated games.
No.
And that's one faction of, like, that game was great. And then the cutscenes, because they were interactive, they actually were not as good as the gameplay. So you disconnected there.
Yeah.
So I feel like games like God of War, that they actually go all in onto doing this one thing and doing all great, then it's great. But you do need about, I think God of War, I think took them like 7 years, 8 years.
Yeah, I was gonna say massive investment.
Last of Us 2. Veronica actually just mentioned The Last of Us 2 also did some pretty groundbreaking things for sure. But once again, they actually have about 7 or 8 years to actually kind of do it. And that's actually a full development. Like they normally have the stuff before, whenever you have to actually plan the game and have the story written and all this stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, like there's something to be said about like sometimes cutting corners in certain things, because the game is so vast that you have to then go, okay, what we're going to do with the cutscenes.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to have your priorities for sure.
Exactly. Welcome to everybody. As you can see, like comments are starting to come in, which is great for Frostbite is here. Veronica's here. Welcome. Arran is
Hey,
here.
Veronica. I know Veronica. She actually works. She's a content creator at Frame by Frame with me.
Oh, nice.
That's how I know Veronica. She's
That's
awesome.
great.
Really good 2D animator and concept artist.
Awesome. Well, welcome, Veronica. Awesome to have you here. She's also a gamer by the sound of it. Because
Yeah, it seems like it.
Awesome. Great. Awesome. So, like, I'm just going to showcase this because I think it's a must for people that don't know you. Veronica saying hi.
Hey.
So this stuff that you have here, obviously you were just saying offline and that people know you for this shot.
Yeah.
But I kind of like have to showcase it because
of course, by all means.
so good. And I think your reel overall actually kind of it's really well done.
Thank you.
So like I would like for all those people that haven't seen a behind the scenes of this, including myself, like what actually kind of like prompted you to actually do this shot in the first place, and how long did it take you to actually get to the end of this?
So this all instigated when the first teaser trailer for Spider-Verse came out, and I was just fascinated by it, honestly, in terms of just the aesthetic. And it was actually it's kind of ironic that I ended up making a full entire thing that took me God knows how long. But initially, how it started was I wanted just to get back into painting, like digital painting at the time. And I hadn't done it for a while. It's kind of like a side hobby. And I just love the aesthetics. I was like, okay, I'm just going to paint a city in this style because I think it's really interesting.
I see. This stuff here, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right,
so that kind of thing. That's how it initially started. And then I also have like a side hobby for like lighting in CG. I haven't done it for a while, but I did it on my like university major projects. Whenever I do personal projects, I always light them myself just because I like that side of things. But yeah, so then I was like, okay, let's try and make it in CG, see how close I can replicate it. And then I was like, well, I'm an animator. I might as well just make an animation now. I've already stepped inside Maya. Why don't I just do an entire thing?
Of course.
That's kind of how it escalated. And I actually thoroughly enjoyed animating it as much. It wasn't that I didn't want to animate it. It was more that just wasn't what instigated it.
Nice.
But in terms of like how long it took me, so I was still working at the time, and I did it in my evenings and occasionally lunchtimes at work. And I think it took me about 2 weeks to animate it, just like a couple of hours a day, 2-3 hours a day kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then to light and render and comp everything and do the work. The longest part was the webs, which I'll go a bit more into in a second. But overall, from start to finish, it took over the scope of like 3 months.
3 months,
and
right? Yeah.
I think I published it literally like it was either the day before or after Spider-Verse, like the official trailer hit. And so that's what I think helped it like go through the roof kind of thing. It was just really good timing. I think because I published it, I finished it on New Year's Day. I was literally like, okay, I've got to finish it by, I think, 2018. I was like, it's got to be finished before 2019.
So perfect timing then. You were like kind of thinking about the idea, and then the movie came along, and then
exactly.
Awesome. Yeah, no, it's really cool to see, man. And then like other things that I really liked about your show reel is like you actually worked on Happy, right?
Yeah.
And this guy, I actually watched quite a few episodes. This little guy had so much personality. Really, really cool stuff.
Yeah, right. Patton Oswalt, such good voice acting.
Yeah, was it cool to animate too?
Oh, I loved it. Yeah, totally. I think I was a bit starstruck because my favorite animated movie is Ratatouille, and just hearing essentially Remy the Rat when I was animating it, I was just like, this is awesome.
That's it. Exactly. Nice one.
No, I love that show. It was so much fun. It was one of those, the way they pitched it to me, it was just like, it just sounded so crazy, but like also in terms of like, as an artist, not just as a story, because the story sounded weird and I love weird stuff. Yeah. But in terms of an artist, they were kind of like, we want to do super cartoony stuff when when it's required, but it's also like a very deep and like quite a heavy show as well. And so it needs to have like subtle moments. And I was like, that's best of both worlds kind of thing. So it just sounded like, so much fun. And I'm so glad I went.
Yeah, so cool. Yeah, you actually did this at Axis, am I right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know if you know this, but I actually worked at Axis as well.
Oh, awesome. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I was there. I was actually there as a lead cinematic animator for Horizon Zero Dawn.
Oh, awesome.
So they actually did, like, the whole sequence when Aloy actually goes from being a child to becoming a woman.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so
that's so cool. Yeah, that's a really nice sequence.
As at Axis, yeah. So it was actually quite fun. I remember seeing the script of the game with the thumbnails and like just like all the storyboards and stuff, and thinking, this is pretty cool. I love the idea of it and the story behind it. I'm like, I think this is gonna be right. But at Axis, we just like looking at the cutscenes. So I didn't know. It was the first time that I was outside of development.
Oh, right.
And I didn't know what the guys at Gorilla were doing. But yeah, then seeing the game coming together and stuff was so cool. It was really, really cool.
Oh, yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, man. Yeah, so like in your show, really have like personal shot. This is personal shot, so is it commercial shot?
No, this is a kids' TV show, which is actually produced by Jellyfish Pictures as well. But this was my first time working there, so this was about 2 years ago.
Nice.
But yeah, that was a pretty tough show, just because we were grinding shots out left, right, and center.
Yeah, still looks great.
Thanks.
Yeah,
it's very like just hitting your poses and finding ways to break it up as fast as possible, basically.
That's exactly right. Yeah, because I know TV is like the timing and the time that they give you to actually create content is.
Yeah, I think this was the most intense I did. I think we were animating like I was probably doing about 10 seconds a day, something like that. Average.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, not surprised, man. It's it's incredible. Yeah, I never actually experienced it, but I have friends like you that have experienced it, and yeah, it's incredible. And then we have some more happy.
Yeah. I looked at a lot of Tom and Jerry for Happy as well, especially when he was like panicking and that kind of thing.
Oh, I see.
Because we could really push things. They wasn't so keen on us using like multiples as much as I wanted to.
Yeah.
But like in this shot in particular, when he's scrambling in his legs, you can kind of see that they've got, well, with the motion blur, it's hard to see.
Yeah, right.
I've literally referenced some Tom and Jerry, like where Tom's legs are scrambling kind of thing.
Yeah. But like with the motion blur, actually works perfectly.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, like he actually makes it like, and the eyes and the stuff.
Yeah. I looked at Roger Rabbit for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so much fun.
The rig looks super flexible.
Yeah, it really was. It was one of those things where there was almost too much control, to the point where like some controls were doing like the same thing as others, and so it was like, okay, which parts should I utilize as my like key controls here?
Yeah. There is such a thing as too many controls in order to actually animate your character, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
It was awesome though. I loved, like, one of the things that I really encourage. It's one of those things that, so when I used to work on TV shows, what they would tend to do is they would lock a lot of the attributes on the controls so that you couldn't scale things and potentially break the rig kind of thing.
Yeah.
And when you're working on TV shows, you tend to work with more junior animators, and for that reason, obviously, that's when things get a little more inconsistent and that kind of thing.
Of course.
And so they tend to limit it. But on this show, this is the first time I'd stepped in, and every single control you could rotate, you could translate, you could scale in any way you wanted, and I was like, this is going to be so much fun.
That is cool. That is really, really cool. So would you reckon that like this was the more fun that you had, or the project that you're doing right now, it's actually even more
They're
fun?
very different. I think in terms of, again, this is one of those things like the artist and the consumer kind of thing. So as an artist, I think there was more flexibility on Happy, and so that made it super fun. We had complete creative freedom. There was only very few times where the director would step in and say, well, actually, I was looking for something more like this.
Yeah.
And so because at the same time, like Happy wasn't the only thing driving that, driving the whole, because you got Nick as well. And so he's kind of he's like the comedic relief in a lot of the cases, so you can just have fun with it. So in that sense, I think it was really fun. The thing that I'm doing now is a lot more challenging, and I think I'm enjoying it just as much, but for different reasons. Because as an animator, I think I'm always trying to strive for like the most believable performance I can. And this is something where it's like a lot more subtle, a lot more genuine, kind of like trying to be as honest and sincere as possible with your acting and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I tend on this film, I'm kind of typecasted more as like a subtle animator. Okay. I don't know where the transition happened, because I was always known as the person who used to break rigs and go absolutely crazy with everything. And then one day someone was just like, "You're doing acting now." I was like, okay, if that's what you want. And now I actually struggle to try and get more like crazy cartoony stuff.
Yeah.
Just in terms of what they want from me when they cast me shots. So it's kind of interesting because I love both. And I think, yeah, that's one of the things that I don't know where the transition happens, but I do like both sides. I think in terms of what I'm doing at the moment, I'm really enjoying kind of going a bit deeper into things, like I'm trying to come from like my own emotional place whenever I'm referencing and that kind of thing, to try and make it as honest as possible. And that in itself is a real challenge. So it's a very different show, but I'm enjoying it just as much as Happy.
Yeah. No, I see what you mean. And it makes you a more flexible animator to be able to actually not only do like more physical stuff, but then also going deeper into the character as well, right?
Yeah, totally.
Then you can actually have different speeds that you can actually activate. That stuff you never get. So after spending so much time working in a character like Happy, then guaranteed you can go back to that. Just give it another couple of weeks.
Yeah, totally. Well, that's actually the thing, because I worked on both seasons, and so I think I was only one of like 2 or 3 other animators to come back for season 2, and because of that, we were kind of put in a lot more responsibility of teaching everyone else how to use them. And I literally just stepped in, and it felt like yesterday. It'd been like it'd been over a year since I'd animated him, and I was so excited and pumped to get back onto him. Rig was relatively similar. I think we might have even used the same rig as the year before. And so I could just step in, and I was just like, so this is how you do this. This is like even simple things where like animators would have this big round nose, and they'd keep it one shape that was just like symmetrical. And just by squishing one side and bringing out the other one to make it slightly more asymmetric and that kind of thing, like people weren't doing, and we just figured out before. Nice. So came straight back into it.
Awesome. Oh, exactly. That's the thing. Like, and spending some time doing it like 100%, especially professionally, when they actually you have the pressure of like, here's a shot that we expect you to do in about a week. Give it to me.
Exactly.
They pay me to do this stuff, so I better do it. Yeah. So it's great to hear that. So like Nilofar, he says, I really like how much Arran spent on working and exercising when he just started animation. Is this before you started professionally, or?
I think that's maybe if he's referring to when we're talking about my background, potentially. Maybe. I mean,
well, you can talk about how you actually the transition, because there's always a moment that you go from university to professional work, right?
Oh, totally.
There's like a bridge to be like stepped on and like crossed. So how did that pan out for you?
That was a really like tough transition for me, because it's one of those things. I'm sure you can resonate with this as well. Most animators I've spoken to have done, where it's like, for me at least, when I was at uni, I was learning how to pass uni. Then when I got into industry, it wasn't I know how to animate now. It was like, okay, now I'm learning how to animate in industry.
Sure.
And so it was, in terms of like exercises I used to do at uni, because you don't really know like the most efficient way or the best way to approach things in terms of like how to train yourself and improve and be as efficient as possible. Like I would go straight into full-on acting shots before I'd ever done one before, without any prep. This is when I was at uni, and I would just start shots and they wouldn't look very good. But obviously each time you get a little bit better, you'll learn something new and you make a mistake and then you learn from it. But in terms of doing that, I've learned that once I got into industry, the transition, like I grew so much faster because I wasn't rough in the sense that like I was still trying my best to make every shot as good as possible. At the same time, like you have to prioritize where you only have a certain amount of time to do certain shots, especially in TV. And so like you've got to pick your moments to really push yourself. And then other shots where it's just like a blink and then they move on kind of thing. You don't need to spend 5 days on that kind of thing. You know, you can just get a blink in there. It does what it needs to do and you move on. Yeah. And so I think in that sense, there was a lot of practice. But like my first job was actually a fixer. So I wasn't actually animating many shots. And the ones that they did give me, my lead was like, this isn't really working. And then they gave it to someone else to redo it. So that was tough, but you know, you got to learn the hard way. And I just learned from look at other people's work, honestly. There was he ended up moving on to being my lead later for that production later and the next couple, Dan Cripps. And he taught me so much. And I used to just watch Dan's shots and learn from him and just be like, oh, so that's how he's doing that thing. And every single time he did a new shot, I would learn something new. And that really helped. Also, as a fixer, you get to jump into other people's shots. So that was really insightful. You can literally click on the curves and be like, oh, okay.
That's how they do it. So was this when you were working in TV? That you were?
Yeah, this is a Blue Zoo.
Yeah, I see. And I'm guessing like that TV experience, given the fact that it was your first experience, must have taught you a lot about humility because of seeing other people doing shots faster, better than you, all of that stuff.
Yeah, it was very intimidating at first because I was like, also, I just moved to London. I didn't know anyone. No one. There was one person I knew who from uni who also started working around the same time, but we was on different productions and floors and stuff. So it was the whole experience is very intimidating. Also, just like everything outside of work as well. So it was kind of just trying to get my feet grounded was really tough at first. And like you say, seeing all these people who had been doing it for a few years and they knew, like I say, what to prioritize and how to tackle TV animation as efficient as possible. So there's me trying to do one shot and it's taken me a few days and I'm still not getting it right. Whereas in the meantime, they've probably done like 10 shots and got them signed off.
That's it.
So it's tough, but like at the same time, they're all very encouraging. And I think the thing that I admire most about them is they gave me a chance. They took a risk on me, honestly. Like one of the animation directors a few years down the line said to me, you know what, I looked at your reel, which you applied for us with. I wouldn't have hired you. And I mean, he was honest about it and I kind of appreciated it because I knew that's when I realized for me that they took a risk because my animation wasn't particularly good, but I think the thing they liked about it is that I was pushing things and trying things that were different. We were kind of doing, my final major was like a weird stop-mo, really cartoony, like, I don't know if you know UPA, they're like a 1950, they were animation studio in the 1950s, which were like, basically Disney went on strike and all these animators started their own studio and did what they wanted to do, which was very un-Disney style. Yeah. And it was like super cartoony and weird. And one of the most famous things they did was Gerald McBoing Boing. And it's a really weird show. You should check it out. It's very creative, super like, I don't know how to describe it, but anyway, it's very different. And we were referring to that kind of thing. And so Blue Zoo saw that and they actually hired our entire group that did that project just because it was so out there. And that's kind of Blue Zoo's thing is they like to try different styles and be as creative as possible. So I think they took a chance on us.
So that's why. So they hired all of you that actually did that project, right?
Yeah.
That's great. That's really, really cool.
Yeah.
And that's a very good point. Yeah, someone is actually just asking as well about like when you're a student, sometimes you actually finish a shot and you feel like you just get destroyed by the animation gods. Veronica. And that's a very good point, because I feel like there's something to be said about like believing in people and seeing something in them.
Yeah,
I had that on both sides of like people seeing something in me and hiring me, even though you don't see it yourself.
yeah,
Um, and actually, I had the opposite side of the coin, where I see something in someone, they don't see it in themselves, and you can just then spend months, years working with them and be like, no, you're really that good. And
yeah,
person doesn't believe it because they don't really see it right now, but over time, over years, they'll be like, you know what, actually, yeah, this person told me back then that I was good, and now I can see what they meant.
yeah,
um, and
totally.
it's just something special whenever someone for the first time they see something in you. It's really cool. Like for me, was Jason Ryan, the guy from I don't know if you know him, but
Rings a bell, yeah.
yeah, Jason Ryan. He was the founder of Animate and animation
Right.
director for Disney and all that stuff. Like I used to look up to him a lot, and it's the same thing. Like he actually just like, I was not even animating. I couldn't animate. I was like a rubbish animator. Finished my university 3 years, didn't know how to animate still, and he was just saw my illustrations, and based off that, he was like,
Wow,
"Sorry, like I can see something here," and he's just
that's
like,
awesome.
like, and it's weird though because there was nothing else for him to see except for that. But just having that someone believing in you makes you kind of like want to work harder for them in a way.
Totally. It's
Yeah.
actually kind of funny because I also had that same experience, but when I was trying to apply for university, because I
Mm.
applied, basically my course had two different sub courses that made the one thing. So Bournemouth call themselves the NCCA, which is the National Centre for Computer Animation, but they have two courses. One's arts and one's more technical. And I didn't know the difference. I didn't know there were two at the time when I applied. So I actually applied for the technical one when I
Yeah.
wanted to apply for the art one. And I went to the interview and I had all these illustrations of like anatomy and that kind of thing. And just like other concepts and weird aliens and whatever creatures. And the guy looked at me and he was like, "Did you apply for the right course?" And I was just like, boom, what just happened? I don't know how to respond to this. So I kind of just played it cool and was just like, no, this is the course I wanted to go on to. Because I was like, what am I going to say? No? Okay, I'll come back next year.
Yeah, of course.
And so I just kind of played it cool. And somehow they still put me on the course, even though everyone that went on that course needed, well, apparently it was a requirement to have like an A level in maths and physics and have some experience in programming.
Wow.
But I had none of it. All I had
Yeah.
was some pretty cool drawings and some crappy Cinema 4D like game trailer that I made that was like a fake game trailer.
Yeah.
And somehow he put me on there. So
See?
Again, he gave me a chance.
Exactly. Yeah. Which is great. It's really cool every time it happens, because yeah, there's something special about that, because you kind of feel like now I have to step up, because
Yeah.
I think they messed up. And then you do the thing. You're like, actually, no, they didn't. I did.
Yeah,
So
totally.
yeah, awesome stuff. We have a few questions, so I'm just trying to read through them to actually select. So Aaron asked Aaron, any advice to get into feature or TV, like starting into effects, crowds, or to later on get onto character animation, or wait?
Any advice on getting into? Honestly, whenever someone asks me for advice getting into industry, I think, kind of referring back to what we just mentioned, is at least for me as well, if I'm ever asked to hire for people, the one thing I'm mostly looking for is like potential, but mostly in their ideas. So if I think that's one thing that you can't teach someone, because I have every like faith that someone like Harvey could bring anyone in who had never done animation before and teach them how to animate, and they could animate really well. But at the same time, like Harvey can't teach them the ideas.
Yeah.
So like obviously you can educate them in kind of what's worked in the past, but it's the things that are new that really strike people. And I think that's one thing for me whenever I see junior reels where like it's just something I didn't expect, or it was a gag that was really original and it made me laugh, or even if it's just like an acting choice or something, whatever it may be, even physical comedy or whatever. If it's just something that I didn't expect and I had never seen before, and I really like connected to it in some way. I think that's really important, because when you bring that to the table, that's the thing that like people are gonna click to, because even there are things in movies that aren't like flawlessly executed, but people still remember it. It could be like some really crappy like 80s comedy, but people will still remember the joke because the joke was hilarious, but it could have been told terribly, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I think that's really important, is just having ideas. That's what I say.
Yeah, no, you're completely right. Like whenever I'm actually hiring, I hire talent. I don't really hire the knowing the software, pressing the button.
Yeah, exactly.
That stuff can be taught. That's actually the easy part. But actually having ideas, thinking outside the box, that stuff is really unique and is very hard to find people. Especially, I don't know if you've been in this situation just yet, Aaron, but when you're actually watching show reels back to back to back to back to back, show reels start to look very much like the same.
I'm sure. I haven't had too much. Like, I've only had to do it a couple of times, and it hasn't been too many. But I imagine if I was just looking through, I still see reels online, and a lot of the time I'm like, I've seen that 10 times.
Exactly, yeah, and it's not to actually kind of diss anyone or like to be negative in any ways, but it's just that normally there's this standard of like, what do you need to actually get into games, or what do you need to get into film? So then you actually go like body shot or facial shot or close up or this camera or that camera, and it's because other animators have done it through time. So therefore, there's a formula out there for you.
Yeah, there's like a success rate.
Exactly. So if this person has done it, and this person has done it, this person has done it, then if I do it too, then I must actually get a job here, right?
Totally.
But unfortunately, like especially the studios that you want to get into the most, like the Pixars and the DreamWorks and all, like I don't know, Naughty Dog, all of those, they're actually looking for the originality of it all. Like they actually they're looking for the, like the French say, the je ne sais quoi.
Yeah.
They're looking for that. They're looking for like that show reel or that piece of work or whatever that actually kind of goes like, man, I never seen that before. That's actually pretty cool. That's when you get back.
Totally. I think the best way I could describe it is just like, you want to say something about yourself in your work as well. Like if they can, I think one thing that's really important is whenever I see someone's work, and if it is something just like, if I told 100 people to do a walk cycle and I looked through each one, if everyone just did a generic walk cycle, I know nothing about that person. But if one person did something slightly different, or if they had like an attitude or something about them, then that tells me something that either they're interested in or something that they enjoy doing, or they're just consciously thinking about it. Yeah. And I think that goes a long way. So whenever I see like personal work, for me at least, whenever I do personal work, it's not, I want to get into this place, and so I'm going to aim for this thing because I know that's what they like. For me, as I do personal work as an artist, I don't care, to be honest, if anyone likes it. It's more just like self-expression for me.
Yeah.
And if anyone likes it, that's awesome, and I'm, that I'll be over the moon. But that's not what I'm looking for.
Yeah, and I feel like that's sometimes like what some people miss the point. I think like there is something to be said about like being stressed out or really want to get into a place. So animation industry, right? No matter what you actually want to do, like you feel like you want this thing so much that you do anything to get in. But funny enough, whenever you actually stop feeling that pressure and you're just doing it because, you know what, I'm just going to do it because I enjoy this. Yeah. Those shots are normally the ones that people go like, this is cool.
Yeah, totally.
Everything else that you've done before that you were like, I'm just going to do it because that stuff normally doesn't go through. And I think it's because you're actually creating in a relaxed mode, and you're creating for yourself. And it's like the selfishness of it all just showcases through your artwork, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's something to be said about that, about just do it for yourself. And if they like it, they like it. If they don't, then I'm sure at some point someone will like it, someone will love it.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of those things where I was actually, so this morning I was just going through like a fluctuation of trying to just like keep myself fully pumped for the next week kind of thing. And I stumbled across an old documentary it was talking about the 9 old men of Disney. But I hadn't seen it before because I usually look at this stuff. And it was actually they'd sat down loads of really famous animators of like the next generation, you could say, down at a table, and they were all people that were mentored by those people. So you had people like Brad Bird and Andreas Deja.
I've seen that. I've seen
And
that. It's
yeah,
great.
and it's awesome. But the main thing that I would that take away from your own life and bring that to your work. That's the main thing that make people connect to it. And like Milk Cole, I think he was saying to people like, you have to like animation can't be your life. You've got to have a life outside of animation and bring that to your animation, and that's what really makes people resonate with it.
That's it, exactly. Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I think that's exactly how it is. Because like I was just talking about this on the last live chat as well. I really admire Brad Bird. He's by far one of the people that I admire most in the animation industry. It doesn't matter what.
Me too.
But everything he does, you can clearly see that there is a piece of him in it, right?
Totally.
Like even Ratatouille, like the story of Ratatouille, when they had like another director and then he came along and then he changed things and stuff like that. As soon as he actually stepped in, you can tell that it's a Brad Bird movie, and there's something about it, and you cannot put your hand on it. It's something like Mission Impossible: Ghost Protocol, Brad Bird movie. Once again, there's something about it that makes it Bird, and I cannot.
It's an energy.
But there's something like the way he cuts, the way he actually kind of shoot, kind of sets up his shots, the action scenes, how he actually kind of pans out the whole story, so he can have valleys at all points, and he just hits at the right time. That stuff is true. Doesn't matter if it's Ratatouille or Ghost Protocol. It's just like it's there. And,
totally.
Yeah, it's just incredible. And same thing with Glenn Keane. This they all great at that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. It's actually really funny because there was one behind the scenes. I think it was of The Incredibles or something like that. It may have been Ratatouille, and they said if you look closely enough, every single shot that was animated in that movie is a caricature of Brad Bird.
Especially Frozone. He's not Frozone. What's his name?
Syndrome.
Syndrome. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
Syndrome.
I see Brad Bird in Syndrome.
For sure. It's exactly like him. Yeah, like I remember the first time that I actually kind of looked at Brad Bird, and I'm like, who's this guy? This guy is like, I want to be like this guy one day. Was on the behind the scenes of the first Incredibles. That normally you have the animation director, and the animation director, even if you actually go back to the 9 Old Men, like they're actually very much contained because I'm obviously high stress things. So they gather the group, and normally you're like, look, this is like crunch time. We need to actually get this out of the way. And it's kind of monotone, and it's like everyone gets back to work. There's no time to joke about. Done.
Yeah.
Brad Bird was the first person that I just saw going on stage and going like, guys, if you do this is going to be the best movie ever. Oh my God, this is going to be better than all the Marvel movies and all that stuff. And he was hyping the animators, and you could tell that people were clapping in the end and stuff. And all those animators, when they came back to their desks, they were pumped to actually go back and do their best work. And I could see that, and I'm like, that's the first time that I see, and guaranteed he was still under pressure. But the fact that he actually kind of bring it out of himself to actually kind of give away that energy to kind of keep people pumped, even at the end through 3 years of development, it's something special, man. It's something that's really special. He really feels it, and like I took a cue from that. I try to be like that at work as well, as much as I can. But
that's awesome.
I'm not
definitely. That's the thing. You shouldn't that's the other thing is like you shouldn't try to be someone else. Just learn from their advice, but then just make it your own. And if you bring something you want to be bringing something new to the table, don't you?
Yeah.
So you essentially want to be like the new Brad Bird that's a different Brad Bird. Essentially, you want to be the Harvey Newman.
I want to be the black Brad Bird. That's what Yeah, and another guy that actually I have the same exact vibe was the director of God of War. Same thing. He was also an animator before, which gives me hope that maybe it was him and the director and owner of Team Ico, the guys that did like Shadow of the Colossus and stuff.
Yeah.
So he was also an animator that turned director. So part of me wants to believe that if you're an animator and then you become a director and then you direct your own game, your game is kick-ass because
it's a foolproof method.
Yeah, foolproof. So let's
100% success rate.
100% success rate. So I hope I actually get to experience that at one point to actually see how that goes. But yeah, like it's great. Do you want to actually get into games at some point, or do you see yourself as just doing feature film?
No, I definitely want to go into games. It's one of those things that like I've always wanted to try both, and it's kind of a weird one because we've had this conversation before where like I initially wanted to start in games. I didn't even think about features from the very beginning. I think even into my second year of university, I still had the intention of going into games, and then kind of I still had as you know, I still had a massive like passion for movies. It just wasn't my initial like intention, and basically one of my friends came to me with this pitch for one of the 5 major projects, and I just really bought into it. And it wasn't necessarily the direction I was planning on going, but I just thought it was really fun. It seems like a really cool project, and it ended up like it had one of the higher reputations out of all the grad films that came out, which was awesome.
Nice.
And just because of that style, it kind of gravitated me towards the more character-based like TV work initially. Like I say at Blue Zoo, that's kind of what they connected to, and they liked that work. And so that's what I started to learn. Yeah. And then in the back of my mind, I was like, okay, that's kind of stringing away from where I was planning on going. But at the same time, I like this too. So like, I'm not down the dumps about like, I can always come back to it.
Sure.
And so just over time, I kind of got closer and closer towards features and further away from games. And it's one of those things I'm just hoping that I don't leave it too late to the point where, because you can get that reputation of, if you try and apply for something there, it's like, well, you've got no experience in it, so how can we hire you? Or you literally, you could be like the Glenn Keane of features and then just go, oh, I want to work in games now. You're like Timmy Two Shoes, who's 5 years old.
Yeah, exactly.
So like, I don't know. So it's one of those things. But no, definitely games is something that I've always still gravitated towards. And I think like there's around like the time now is probably, I don't want to leave it too late so that people won't even consider me for a position like that as well. So like, I love both sides. I don't have any preference, and I'd be happy either whichever direction it goes. But at the same time, I feel like I'd be kicking myself in the foot if I never got the opportunity to work in games either. So
makes sense, yeah. Especially if you started that way, and then
exactly, I owe it to myself.
What would be like your favorite studio to work for, or favorite game or IP that you actually would like to?
Hard question. I don't know. I think in terms of games, I haven't had like, there's not one particular studio which really like I was like, this place. If I had like one place that really struck me, like if we're going by like track record from previous games and that kind of thing that I used to love, I still love, in terms of like their track record, it'd probably be somewhere like Insomniac. Just because, like I say, I was a massive fan of Ratchet and Clank. They did Spyro, the originals, and that kind of thing. Like, also, like Naughty Dog is obviously like a big one that I used to play as a kid. But to be honest, for me, studios, even now, like even the same with features, for me, it's not, the studios don't matter so much because you can find great stories and great talent anywhere. You just got to find the right team and get the right gathering of people, and you can make some incredible things.
Yeah.
So in that sense, I don't, if the project's cool and the story's good and they could be literally no one knows who they are or have any reputation, if I feel like I can invest and resonate with it, then I'll put everything into it. So in that sense, I don't really have much preference, honestly.
That's cool. Yeah, no, like now that you say that, it's true. And it's funny though, because the studios that actually are unknown and all of a sudden can come out of nowhere and they produce something amazing are normally the ones that people actually gravitate towards even more. Uh,
Totally.
Into the Spider-Verse is the perfect example, right? Because Sony Pictures, as good as they were doing animation, there were no Blue Sky or Pixar or DreamWorks. People used to
Yeah.
see it as like, okay, they do Hotel Transylvania, it's cool, but perhaps it's not like classic, right? Like
Yeah.
stuff. And then they brought out
Stands the
they
test of time. Yeah.
yeah, and it's arguably the most influential movie since Toy Story first came out for 3D animation, right? Because
Yeah.
it changed the game in such a big way. So I completely agree. Also, and you maybe don't know this, but from the inside, an insider perspective in the games industry, I feel like we are going in through a bit of a transition right now. I don't know if you noticed, but for the for the last 10, 15 years, there's no longer double A game development per se.
Right.
There's
Yeah.
indies and there's triple A's, and there's nothing in between.
Totally.
There's a complete void, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and I think indies are doing an amazing job, especially with like the iPhone games and the Nintendo Switch and like Xbox platforms, PlayStation, PSN, super
Yeah.
cool. And then there's like EA's and Activisions and the big companies, but there is quite a lot of studios that now fit on that little window of like not really like indie, not really the huge AAA like a
Yeah.
and Warcraft or whatever. There's like this actual window of things, and there's quite a few of them. And even big companies like Microsoft are investing in studios like that. They start out of nowhere. They just have experienced people gathered in one roof, and they kind
Yeah.
of like there's this feeling of like if we gather enough talented people that know each other, they work really well together, and we put them on the one roof, and everyone has experience in different things, then whatever they do is going to be special.
Yeah. Totally.
And I like that. I really like that, and I haven't seen that in the industry since I've started. I think it's the first time, and all of a sudden, this all start popping from everywhere in every studio. Every publisher has one, so it's cool to see. It's really
That's
cool.
awesome. No, it does honestly sound very exciting because you just, like you say, it can just get very saturated of, like it's kind of like the success rate thing of like where you have a formula, you know what works, and it's hard to kind of bridge that gap to find like the perfect balance. It's like you go for something completely out there, which like you try, but you may not know if it's going like I don't know. It's hard to describe when it comes to like indie things. Is
Yeah,
like a lot of the time it's for a very niche market,
exactly.
and like it's hard to kind of connect with everyone and gain that exposure. Of course, you do get those ones that really stand out and they do go through the roof.
Yeah,
Um, but then you get the other end of the spectrum where like they know how things can work and they'll just regurgitate it
the same.
because that's what they know what works.
And the bad thing about all this is that normally studios like that are so big, because you have like some kind of experience, because you've actually published a lot of games before, there's like normally a tendency to have a lot of like ego or like a lot of like thing like feel complacent about like what
Yeah,
you've done so far, because like if you actually kind of published or released enough awesome games, there's this sense of like whatever we do next is going to be awesome, no matter what we
yeah,
it's going to be great. But awesome things don't really happen that way, right? Like
no,
actually putting the work and think outside the box and make sure that it's original and gather the right people and just have the right amazing mix of things happening,
I
right?
think you need the uncertainty because at the end of the day, it's not what you should be even thinking about. You shouldn't be thinking about, is this going to work for everyone? It's like, is this working? If it works for us, it'll work for everyone else.
Yeah,
And so if you're focusing on just making something that you think out there is going to work, it doesn't matter if it does or not, because honestly, if you have that mentality of, I personally, like, if you personally believe it's going to work, then the chances are it probably will. But if you're like, I know what they like out there, so I'll make what they like, because, you know, that's when like you say, you get complacent.
yeah, exactly. And because gamers are only getting more educated on how the games
Yeah.
industry is. So before, when I first started, people know about the publishers. No one knew about the studios making the games.
Right.
Now everyone knows about the studios making the games, right? Everyone
Yeah.
knows Naughty Dogs or whatever are the actual people making the games, and then Sony just publishes them. And now we actually get into a part that people know the directors, the Cory Barlogs, like the God of War guy that I was just mentioned, the director.
Yeah.
They know the people behind it, the directors, the animator director, like the animation director for this game, that game. So they know people now within the industry that are doing certain things, and they follow them, which is great.
Yeah.
But that also means that they know how games work and what goes on behind the scenes. Not all the
Yeah.
time, like most of the time they know that. But I feel like it depends on where you are as a studio. There's a lot of studios that ignore that side of things, and they just treat gamers as the gamers 15 years ago, when they just like, here's a box with a game, go and play it.
Yeah.
Nowadays is much more like people want to feel engaged. I want to know what you've done. I want to know the behind the scenes. Like Valorant, I don't know if you've seen this new game by
Yeah.
right? So they always
Yeah.
have videos about like how we've done these things, and this is our team, and this is the director, and this is the lead thing, and whatever. And then you
Yeah.
get to put faces to the work, and then you're like, the net code actually came from these two guys that actually will look this way, and I know they
Right.
now, and I know how hard they work to actually make the game actually play really, really well online. So you develop like a respect for it, and because it's a
Yeah.
game that you invest so much time in it, right? You spend like for a lot of people, there's daytime, they do the work, and then there's game time, and that's
Yeah.
the things that they actually have the most, right, in their lives.
Yeah.
So if you spend so much time invested in something, obviously you want to know as much as you can about it.
Totally.
So I love that. I think this is exactly why I think games are going to just be huge, like in another 10 to 20 years.
Yeah.
It's an unlimited source of like entertainment. There's no limit to it. Like,
Yeah. Totally.
yeah, it's great. Yeah. All right. So we're just over an hour.
Okay.
There
I'm sure
is,
there are some questions in there somewhere.
yeah, there must be some questions here somewhere. Do you want to select one? Because you can actually kind of go through and select.
Sure, I'll have a look as well.
Oh, there's actually here one by Veronica asking about internships.
Any advice on how to pursue internships? I haven't actually done many internships myself, so it's a difficult one. I think just getting in contact with the studio, and like one thing about internships that I've noticed is a lot of studios will actually invest in you trying to like pick up as much as possible, and they'll dedicate someone to you who'd be willing to like give you the time that you need. And so it's a difficult one, but in terms of advice, I think it's the same as just looking for a job, in the sense of like really networking, and just finding ways to kind of, well, there's no right secret formula. This is the same way when people say, how do you get jobs? Is like, it's the same as anything, like just even mastering a craft. It just takes a lot of hard work, and just keeping like consistent and passionate and motivated for what you want to do goes a long way. Like, it sounds like the most frustrating answer because everyone hears the same thing, but that, I think there is no secret ingredient, there is no secret formula. It's it's the same thing. If you keep trying and trying again, eventually it will click. But I think in terms of internships, they're probably I think they'd be looking for someone, like I say, with potential. I actually applied for many internships whilst I was at uni and got no response. There was one person who you may actually know. His name is Kieran Babler.
Oh yeah, I know.
Yeah, so he got an internship. He was in my year at uni, and he got an internship whilst we were all applying. But you could see why he got the internship, because his ideas were just like, he could put his mind to an idea and he could just execute it in a way that it communicated far stronger than what we were able to do.
Yeah.
It's like he just clicked for him, and he just got it straight away, and we were all sitting there just like struggling with the computers. So
Kieran's
like,
working at Sony now, right?
yeah, I don't think he is anymore. He was. I think he's doing like freelance stuff at the moment. He's been all over the place. Literally, like two was one short film and one trailer for League of Legends came out, and he said he worked on both of them. I'm like, you're just darting around now. But yeah, so I think when it comes to internships, they're mainly looking for just people who can communicate really interesting ideas. Because again, they're not looking for someone who can be like the master of their craft. That's
No, but it's. I think you nailed it. That's exactly. And all companies that I've actually kind of hired for internships and stuff, it's always been that potential is definitely the thing that companies look for every single time. If they see you showreel and they see that you have the potential to become a full timer after you finish your uni, and you actually have what it takes. If they see your work and they like it, they will actually give you an internship. But then it's about how do you actually work? How are you professional enough at this point in time that you can actually work with your coworkers? So there's two kind of like sides to the story.
Yeah,
You have to work. If you actually work hard and you actually keep it professional, those three things together will actually kind of grant you most likely a full-time job by the end of the internship.
Yeah.
Because companies don't want to lose people like that, especially kind of like if you show the potential and they already kind of like tested your skills for a period of time. So that's basically how I tell people to see internships, because it's really valuable. And if they actually gave you the internship, it's because they saw something in you. So then it's up to you to actually then showcase like, oh, you thought you saw this much? No, I have this much. And then just blow their minds. No, it's interesting that you actually kind of you actually went to the same year as Kieran. So I actually met him because I did a talk on your university, Bournemouth.
Oh yeah.
I was working in Crytek at that point.
Oh, nice.
Kieran, I met him because he gave me his card. I think that's when I met him. He gave me his card and he said, like, I have the most unique surname ever. And I'm like, what? And I had people around me, and he was like, my surname is blah blah. No, what is it? Was it?
Babla.
Babla, yeah. But he actually said like it's like this, and I was like, wow, that's actually really unique. He said, like, you probably won't forget me. I'm like, okay, cool. That's a lot of confidence.
Yeah, he has a lot of confidence.
Yeah. So then I saw some of his work because he had his work on his cell phone or something, and I was like, yeah, this guy has a lot of talent. I'm pretty sure he's gonna be. The confidence is actually matched by his work, so I'm pretty sure he's gonna do great things.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
He was like that, like since day one. It was kind of funny because, like I say, he was one of those people that just kind of like clicked a bit, and every single time we'd be like sitting next to each other and we were like, oh yeah, that's a bit cool, maybe you could do a little bit here, thinking like we're all kind of at the same point. He was actually the year above me, but then he did his internship, he did a placement year, and then he came back. So then he joined for final year with myself. And but yeah, we always, because he was the year above us and we'd seen all the work that he was doing the next year, so like we saw his group projects and everything, everyone was just like, oh yeah, so we could do a little bit here, a little bit there. We look at his and we're just like, just put the pen down. We're like, should we just leave?
It's like, I actually miss that. Like in university, it's pretty much like working in a studio, but just like smaller in a way. Everyone knows his work and it's just like, oh, that's the guy that actually does the thing and all that stuff. When you work in the studio, it's exactly the same thing. It's just like you go through the corridor and then people look at you funny and you're like, do I know you? And then just like they know your name or they saw your work or something like that. And it's cool though. It's actually really, really cool.
It's awesome. Like that's something that, like I say, I've kind of experienced more so now, because like the places I've worked previous to this production, I kind of like started at the same time as everyone, because I started at a very like I started at a company where they like hire entry level people, and then you kind of build it all up together. And so I was kind of used to having people at the same level as me who nobody knew anyone. We all kind of worked our way up.
Yeah.
And it's only now that I've kind of stepped into productions where people who have got tons of experience come in, and I'm looking up and I'm like, wait, I know you from somewhere. And I'm like, I just have a quick go, I'm like, oh my God, yes. And like, there's like, obviously because of COVID, I'm not able to like sit in the office and speak to them, but I'm still like messaging them. And it's like, I can't believe you joined us. This is amazing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, it's great. It's really, really cool. Actually, we have another question, and I think this is going to be good for you to answer. Do you have any pointers for mimicking and analyzing movement language? How a character acts and moves rather than the art style?
Sure. One thing, if it's a tricky one, I think when it comes to characters, like you have to think about the way I try to consider it is I look at the narrative. I think about, usually if you haven't established it yourself, then someone else will tell you who the character is and like what their overall arc is of the story. And every single intentional move you make should be in purpose of that arc. So the way I kind of think about acting is more about, like, it's really tricky to describe. It's usually about what the situation is, because if you have if they tell you the traits of that person, then there's also still like, it's not necessarily about analyzing, but also trying to like put yourself in their position. I find, because like one thing when it comes to analyzing, it's usually from my own reference, and so it's not like sometimes you can find things online, like if you've got a voice actor, sometimes they'll record the person doing the voice, and so you can see their face as they're delivering the lines, and that sometimes helps. But in terms of like mimicking and analyzing body language, one thing that I tend to look when I'm animating, it's more, if I look at reference, I'll have the key poses, and those are kinds of the things that I'll be looking at in my reference, and then I'll kind of construct it in a way that will be more appealing and works a bit more for the character, specifically who that person is. But then it's more, reference for me is more about like the nuance. So I'm mostly like recording my face. So if it's something like, if I'm holding a pen and I just kind of like do this adjustment with my hands, that's kind of stuff I look more for in reference. When you say like analyzing movement and language, is if there's something that I just did subconsciously when I'm in my reference that I didn't think of and I just like, then I'll implement that in the work. But yeah, it is a tricky one, because I think most of the acting comes from where the person is in that moment, what they're like, the context is, and then trying to decipher what the subtext is like internally in their mind, and breaking it down that way.
Yeah,
it's a hard one to answer.
It is. Yeah, if I may add, I think like the thing that actually helps me the most is actually finding out about the background of the character. So that there's actually the story arc that the character goes through, but then like, what is the character about? Like, do they have a girlfriend or boyfriend? Are they drunk? Do they actually do drugs? Are they like, I know, hard heads? I don't know. Are they very smart? Are they very stupid? It's funny because when you actually have the arc of the character goes from A to B to C and then he actually goes through the whole story. But if you actually know what the character is about, and those things
come from, kind of
yeah,
thing.
those things don't really have to be in the story, but it makes you kind of like be in the character much more as the character would be, because of because you know this, maybe this person was heartbroken by, I don't know, an ex-wife or a fiance or cheated on. As soon as you know that piece of information and you say this guy goes from the bus station to the bus, you know how to actually act that, because you know that what's in his head and some of the stuff that happened in his past. So the movement and analyzing the body movement overall will actually kind of a change based on that.
Totally. There's actually an example that I could give of that, which isn't a production thing, was something that I did in my own work, which is kind of just like an acting challenge. Was I grabbed some audio from the film Get Out, and it's a very like brushed away kind of moment, but there's a moment where the dialogue just says, the guy is smoking, and then I can't remember the exact line she says, but she did basically says something along the lines of, smoking's going to kill you. And then it's just like a pause for like 10 seconds where there's no dialogue. And then all you hear him is like, after that 10 seconds, he just chuckles and goes, yeah. And that's all it is in the dialogue. So the thing that I loved about that is there's so much room for you to explore how that character interprets that reaction.
Exactly
and so I was trying to put myself, I mean, I'm an ex-smoker, but I tried to put myself in a place where I was thinking if I'd been smoking for like 20 years, I'd heard people say that to me over and over again.
Yeah.
What would my be like internal thought process? And so I tried to act it out as though I'd heard this many, many times over and over again. And then there's like, maybe I should stop this. Wait, like there's like 3 stages of like, actually, maybe I should. Well, actually, no, it's just too good. Yeah. That kind of context and that build up. And so just over that 10 seconds of pause when you can't hear anything, it was just his eyes and his thought process and him internalizing. And then there's the punchline of him just like laughing to himself. He chuckles and he just looks up and goes, yeah. But that's all it was. It's the build up that made the acting work.
Made the acting work. Yeah, exactly. That movie is like super interesting to actually analyze, especially when it comes to like, I think the director, Jordan Peele, was Jordan, right? Jordan Peele.
Yeah.
He's really good at like understanding the value of nothingness. Like normally directors, no matter how much, like they try to cram as much action or dialogue or something needs to happen in front of the camera, right?
Yeah.
And he's the opposite. He kind of goes like, how can I express this with the minimum amount of camera movements and acting and all that stuff?
Yeah.
Just allow the scene to breathe from going to point A to B. And then he actually kind of almost like he penned out the whole movie that way. And then what are the like minimal amounts of acting that I can do in order to drive the story forward?
Yeah.
And that's very reminiscent of Alfred Hitchcock. I can tell that he likes to actually study a lot because that's exactly what he did. And I think in his time, Alfred did it because of lack of resources, maybe.
Sure.
Lack of tech.
Yeah.
But Jordan Peele does it genuinely to drive the story forward, and it's a beautiful thing because you spend most of the movie just seeing things.
Yeah.
Beautiful frame shots though, but like it's just seeing, waiting for something to happen.
I know. I think that's one thing that I feel specifically with Get Out and Us. More so Get Out was, like you say, because there's so much time for it to breathe, it almost makes you feel uncomfortable, which actually really works for the tone of the movie. There's literally moments where they're just all sitting around a table, and usually in most typical movies, you'd have one person speaking or maybe even 3 people speaking at the same time. But in this, they're all just kind of looking at each other, kind of like psychoanalyzing each other, and it makes it super tense.
Yeah, exactly. And he actually holds the shots for a very long time.
Yeah, like longer than they should be.
Like you are the as an audience, you like when the father is actually telling bad jokes, like slightly racy jokes.
Yeah.
Like you want to look away, you want to stop listening to this, but you just locked in there, just like this is uncomfortable. You're going to see it the whole thing, and he just keeps babbling along, and you can tell that the main actor is actually being comfortable with this, and you're still there feeling as uncomfortable as the actor. But like, oh my god, this is so bad. It's great. It's really well done.
I love that movie.
Yeah, and he came out of nowhere as well. I mean, going from Hill to then being this amazing director that people look at as the new Alfred Hitchcock and new stylistic things, and talking about like stylistic styles of directing, he definitely has his. It's
really, totally.
Yeah,
it's actually kind of funny because I think in terms of like live action directors, Jordan Peele is definitely someone that I'm looking out over most these days. And he actually did confirm that he's got another 3 movies lined up, which it's speculated they're in the same universe as Get Out and Us.
All right.
Which is super interesting. So I'm really looking forward to that. Another director who, again, has a super iconic style that I love is Edgar Wright.
Is who?
Edgar Wright.
Edgar Wright.
So he did Scott Pilgrim.
Oh, yes.
Baby Driver. He did the Cornetto series, like Hot Fuzz and all that lot.
Excellent movies. Excellent movies. Yeah. Yeah. Like they're very stylistic, but they're very different of each other. But like
Yeah,
Baby
they
Driver,
do.
I really enjoyed it, but very different than Scott Pilgrim. But yeah, I can see the correlations. I didn't know it was the same director actually.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like he has this very ingenious way of like cutting and like making action work. So
Yeah.
he has this like he does very he has like iconic styles. Like one thing, if I tell you now, you'll probably notice it. But in most of his movies, there's a moment where there'll be a camera, like a guy looking just like over the shoulder of the camera, and then a hand just goes kind of thing and just comes in. And that
Yeah.
happens in most of his movies. But like he has this way of like cutting to action. You'll notice it more if you watch Scott Pilgrim and
Yeah.
then you watch the Cornetto series of like Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead, you'll notice it everywhere.
Yeah.
Because he has this way of like swiping the camera,
Yeah.
and like cutting into action and that kind of thing, and it's really iconic in his work.
I'm guessing he's British, right? Given the fact
Yeah, he is.
that series.
He studied at Bournemouth.
But oh yeah. Well, that
Yeah.
university was like really amazing. Like I have to say, when I went over there, I was like, I wish I had studied here because
It is awesome.
the animation VFX, the VFX like module that you guys have, it's really, really
Yeah, it's awesome. I think they're going through and re-skinning it at the moment. They're going through and like doing a whole rework. I think I was like, we were a guinea pig year of that originally, that rework. So I think it was originally one course. Then it got split into two, and we were like the guinea pigs of that. And now I think they're putting it back into one again.
Okay.
That's what I last heard. It's interesting. I don't understand what they're like. I don't understand their intention, but yeah.
Yeah. The end of the year work was actually really special, really cool. I actually was really impressed with like, wow, this quality is really good. You guys like are ready to work. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, totally. It is one of those things that like I think the thing that pumped me most about uni at Bournemouth was obviously once the university gets a reputation, then all the same students want to go to that one place. Like all the people aiming high really want to go for like that one place, and because all those people, it's the same with like a studio. As soon as you get some like hype around something and they all collate, then it just like gets everyone pumped and you make some amazing things.
Of course.
So I think that's one thing I loved about that uni is just like the people I was surrounded by. I felt intimidated by everyone because I was like, oh my god, these people are amazing.
It must actually drive the quality of the work up, right?
Totally.
So Aaron is asking, did you enjoy working on How to Train Your Dragon Homecoming? Did you work on that?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, in that case, you can answer this. Dragons or humans? Very, very good. Yeah.
I animated on both actually. So I did mostly human stuff. So the main people I animated was Hiccup, and I did quite a bit of Gobber. I did a fair bit of Astrid as well. And then I animated 2 shots of Toothless and a couple of the baby dragons. But it was mostly Hiccup. And he was by far the most challenging character I've ever had to animate to date, just because his acting is so specific to him. At the same time, he doesn't really have a way of acting. The way they described him, on the production was, so we had the supervisor of Hiccup from the original movies, and the way he described Hiccup from the first movie was because he's like the most non-Viking person in a massive Viking environment. Yeah, he's trying to fit in, and he doesn't know how to because he's not naturally that way inclined. And so he looks at like mannerisms that everyone else is doing, and then kind of just like Frankensteins them together. So he'll see maybe one woman picking up a bucket a certain way, and then he'll see some really big guy kind of like throwing a rock or something, and so he'll kind of merge those two together, and that's what kind of makes him that awkward, like hiccupy feeling. Okay. And so that was really hard to kind of like put a pin on and be like, okay, so that's what he should be doing in this moment. The other thing that was challenging is that movie takes place like 15 years or so after the final movie. And so Hiccup and Astrid were married at that point, and I had 2 kids. And so one of the challenges the directors were saying for the overall story arc is they wanted to see a change in how they are together in married life. And obviously, I'm not married and I don't have kids, and so that was really hard to kind of connect with.
Yeah.
But that was a challenge. So all those things combined made it a very difficult, and also it was my first like feature quality production. So there's a lot of things all together.
A lot of things together, yeah. But
It's hard.
if they give you like a hiccup to actually animate, you must have had like a really good left a good impression on them for them to actually give you like.
Yeah, totally. They gave me some really good opportunities. Again, I think it's one of those things where they gave me a chance. So I can't remember his surname because it's really hard to pronounce. But he's very well respected in the industry. His name's Luca. And he was the animation supervisor, and he's the head of character animation for the whole of Jellyfish. Okay. And he supervised that show, and that was my first interaction with him. And in the interview, I got the impression that he wasn't too into my work.
Sorry,
it's okay. He had this weird. I got this weird vibe from him because he saw my work, and I couldn't. Usually, you can tell if someone likes your work or not. Yeah. But with him, he was very like, I could not see. It was either up or down. It kept on fluctuating. I was just like, I don't know if this is a good interview. But then he gave me, because the thing is, I had the work from Happy, and that was my latest work that I could show, and it was a very different style from Dragons, and it wasn't considered it isn't considered feature level, and so that was very difficult. I was just like, I didn't think I got the job, but again, he took a risk on me, and it ended up paying off. But he gave me a lot of help. Like the first shot I ever had to do on that show, I had to re-reference like 10 times because it wasn't exactly how he wanted it, and he was trying to get me to think more about how I approach acting, and I think so. He really helped push me forward. Yeah, it was hard.
Nothing like having a good mentor to actually kind of take you through like a tough situation like that, right?
Oh, totally. No, he was great. He was very critical, and he knows what he likes and what he doesn't like. So if he doesn't like something, he'd be like, okay, we do it this way. And he'll just go through and do it, basically start again. And I'm like, okay. But yeah, he knows what he's looking for.
Yeah, but that's again another thing that I find really interesting, because you know, at least that's what happens to me. You know, when you actually find someone that is talented, and then you can actually kind of rely on them to push them to actually kind of achieve a new level.
Totally.
Because there is people that are talented and they don't like to work hard, or they feel like I'm already good enough. Therefore, why are you telling me to change all these things? Right. There's people that are not super talented, but they have that hard work situation, and that actually is better than the first example. But then there's people who have both, right? Talent and hard work. And to me, that gets me excited. To me, I'm like, okay, so maybe you don't know as much as I want you to know right now, but I know that we can work on this together and actually get you to that next level. And
totally.
And like, I'm pretty sure that's what he saw in you. That's why he gave you the chance, and that's why he actually was with you, kind of like just telling you like whatever. So yeah, I understand.
Yeah, it really paid off as well, because I've had some opportunities in this production to do things that I never thought I would be able to do, especially for my first feature. Like, I was on it from day one. I was like one of the first 5 people on the project, and I started in development. I got to basically establish 2 of the main characters and their personalities and explore everything, and that wouldn't have happened if they hadn't given me that chance. So again, I think it's awesome that they take risks on people.
Exactly. And that's basically the resume of all these industries. Doesn't matter if it's film or games. As long as you show potential, then people will like, come along, we'll show you the stuff.
That's awesome.
Cool. Well, it's an hour and a half now, so I don't want to actually kind of keep you here for too long, Arran.
No worries.
It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thanks a lot for taking the time.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been awesome, and you definitely have to keep in touch.
For sure. Let's keep in touch, man. For everyone in the chat, thanks a lot for the questions. Thanks a lot to Arran to actually kind of keep answering the questions that people were asking, because he's been like kind of doing a little bit of like answering questions about animation, which is great. Thanks a lot, Arran. And yeah, I guess I shall see you around. I'll just see you very soon and talk to you by Twitter and all that stuff that we do normally.
For sure. Looking forward to it. Thanks, everyone.
Good luck on your new project as well.
Thank you. You
No
too.
See you, Aaron.
See ya.